When the idea of the United States buying Greenland surfaced in 2019, most Americans treated it like a late-night comedy joke, but behind that headline was a cold, calculated strategy that very few people actually understood. Because Greenland is not just an icy wasteland, it is one of the most valuable strategic assets on the planet in the 21st century. Geographically, Greenland sits at the gateway of the Arctic, directly between North America and Europe, making it a natural control point for trade routes, military defense, and global power projection. As Arctic ice melts at record speed, entirely new shipping lanes are opening that could shorten travel between Asia, Europe, and the United States by thousands of miles, potentially saving global companies billions of dollars every year and reshaping the future of international trade in America's favor. Financially, Greenland is sitting on an enormous treasure chest of untapped natural resources, including rare earth minerals that are critical for electric vehicles, smartphones, wind turbines, and advanced military technology resources. The United States currently imports heavily from China, which gives Beijing dangerous leverage over the American economy. By securing access to these minerals, the U.S. could protect its supply chains, reduce dependence on foreign rivals, and strengthen its position in the global clean energy race. From a national security standpoint, Greenland already hosts a major U.S. military installation used for missile detection and space surveillance, acting as an early warning shield against potential threats coming over the Arctic from Russia, whose long-range missiles would naturally travel over the polar region in any future conflict. At the same time, China has openly declared itself a near-Arctic power and has been aggressively investing in Arctic infrastructure, ports, and research, signaling that a silent but intense race for Arctic dominance is already underway. For Washington, the idea of buying Greenland was never about owning land for expansion. It was about locking down future economic advantage, preventing China and Russia from gaining strategic footholds near the American homeland, protecting trillions of dollars worth of future resources, and ensuring that the United States remains the dominant global power as climate change redraws the world's economic and military map faster than most people realize. As the laughter faded after the initial headlines, policymakers and strategists in Washington were already focused on a much deeper reality, because beneath Greenland's thick ice sheet lies one of the largest untapped economic opportunities left on Earth. And in a world where resources decide power, Greenland represents leverage worth trillions of dollars. Scientists and geological surveys have confirmed that Greenland holds massive reserves of rare earth elements: uranium, zinc, iron ore, gold, and potentially oil and natural gas, resources that modern economies cannot function without and that will become even more critical as the world transitions toward electric vehicles, renewable energy, artificial intelligence, and advanced defense systems. Rare earth minerals alone are the backbone of smartphones, fighter jets, missiles, satellites, wind turbines, and electric car batteries. Yet today, the United States relies heavily on China for processing and supply, creating a dangerous dependency that puts America's economic and national security at risk. If China were to restrict exports, entire U.S. industries, from defense contractors to clean energy companies, could face massive disruption, job losses, and skyrocketing costs, which is why access to Greenland's mineral wealth is not just about profit but about economic independence. As Arctic ice melts due to climate change, extracting these resources becomes increasingly viable, turning Greenland from an inaccessible frozen land into a future mining powerhouse, and whoever controls that supply will hold enormous influence over global markets. Beyond minerals, the Arctic region is estimated to contain around 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its undiscovered natural gas, and Greenland sits at the center of this energy potential at a time when energy security is once again a top priority for the United States. Control over these energy resources could stabilize prices, reduce reliance on unstable regions, and give America greater control over global energy flows, directly strengthening the U.S. dollar and America's position in the global financial system. But the economic value of Greenland goes even further, because melting ice is opening entirely new Arctic shipping routes that could dramatically reshape global trade, allowing cargo ships to travel between Asia, Europe, and North America in far less time than traditional routes like the Suez Canal or Panama Canal. Shorter routes mean lower fuel costs, faster delivery times, and billions of dollars in savings for American corporations, while also reducing reliance on choke points controlled by foreign powers. If the United States can influence or secure these routes through Greenland, it gains a massive competitive advantage in global trade logistics, reinforcing its economic dominance for decades to come. Meanwhile, China understands this opportunity perfectly, which is why Chinese companies have already attempted to invest in Greenlandic airports, ports, and mining projects, moves that raise serious alarms in Washington because economic investment often precedes political and military influence. History has shown that economic control is often the first step toward geopolitical dominance, and the U.S. cannot afford to allow strategic Arctic assets to fall under the influence of a rival power. From Wall Street to Silicon Valley to the Pentagon, the logic is clear. Greenland is not just land. It is a future supply chain, a trade highway, an energy reserve, and a financial asset that could determine which nation sets the rules of the global economy in the coming decades. In an era where wars are increasingly fought over technology, resources, and economic leverage rather than territory alone, Greenland represents the kind of long-term investment that superpowers think about quietly but seriously. Because controlling resources before they become scarce is how empires stay on top, and for the United States, the true value of Greenland lies not in what it is today, but in what it will become as ice melts, demand rises, and the global balance of power shifts northward faster than most Americans realize. As the economic value of Greenland becomes clearer, the military and strategic importance of the island becomes impossible to ignore. Because in modern geopolitics, economic power without security is fragile, and Greenland sits at one of the most critical military positions on the entire planet. Located directly between North America and Europe, Greenland lies beneath the shortest path that long-range missiles would travel between rival superpowers, which is why the United States has maintained a permanent military presence there for decades through Thule Air Base, one of America's most important early warning and missile defense installations. This base plays a crucial role in detecting potential threats coming over the Arctic, tracking objects in space, and protecting the U.S. homeland long before danger reaches American airspace, making Greenland not a distant outpost but a frontline shield for national security. As Russia rapidly expands its Arctic military capabilities, reopening old Soviet-era bases, deploying advanced submarines, and increasing patrols, near the polar region, the Arctic has quietly transformed into a new arena of great power competition, where control of territory and access points could determine who has the upper hand in any future conflict. At the same time, China, despite not being an Arctic nation, has made it clear that it sees the region as strategically vital, investing in Arctic research, infrastructure, and partnerships while positioning itself to influence future governance of Arctic routes and resources. For U.S. defense planners, the fear is not just direct confrontation but gradual encroachment, where economic investments slowly evolve into strategic leverage near America's northern approaches. Greenland's vast size and location make it an ideal platform for radar systems, satellite tracking, naval operations, and future space defense technologies, especially as warfare increasingly extends beyond land and sea into space and cyber domains. Control over Greenland also strengthens America's role within NATO, reinforcing transatlantic defense links and ensuring that the Arctic does not become a weak point in Western security architecture. In a world where hypersonic missiles reduce reaction times to minutes and space-based systems define battlefield awareness, geography matters more than ever, and Greenland's position offers the United States a rare advantage that cannot be replicated elsewhere. From Washington's perspective, allowing rival powers to gain influence over such a strategically vital location would be a long-term security risk that could take decades to reverse, which is why the idea of securing Greenland politically, economically, and militarily was never impulsive or symbolic but rooted in a clear understanding that the next major conflicts may not begin in crowded cities or traditional battlefields, but in remote regions like the Arctic, where early control quietly determines who holds power when tensions rise. As global competition accelerates and the ice continues to retreat, Greenland is no longer the edge of the map. It is rapidly becoming the center of America's defense strategy for a future where speed, surveillance, and strategic positioning will decide the balance of power long before the first move is visible to the public. As Greenland's military importance comes into focus, the bigger picture becomes clear. The Arctic is no longer a frozen backwater, but the stage for a silent Cold War between the world's most powerful nations, and Greenland sits right at the center of it. Russia, with the longest Arctic coastline, has been rapidly militarizing the region by building new bases, upgrading airfields, deploying icebreakers, and positioning advanced weapon systems designed to protect its Arctic energy projects and control key sea routes, signaling that it views the Arctic as essential to its economic survival and global influence. At the same time, China has strategically entered the Arctic race under the banner of science and trade branding Arctic shipping lanes as part of its Polar Silk Road, and investing in infrastructure, research stations, and partnerships that could give it long-term leverage over future trade routes and resource access, even though it has no Arctic territory of its own. For the United States, this convergence of rival powers near its northern approaches represents a serious long-term challenge, because control over Arctic trade routes could shift global commerce away from traditional paths dominated by U.S. allies, while dominance over Arctic resources could reshape energy markets, supply chains, and technological leadership. Greenland, politically tied to Denmark but geographically closer to North America, becomes the strategic hinge point. If the U.S. maintains strong influence there, it can anchor Western power in the Arctic, protect its homeland, secure future trade routes, and block rivals from gaining a permanent foothold near American territory. This is why the idea of buying Greenland was never about headlines or ego, but about securing stability in a rapidly changing world where climate change is opening new frontiers faster than international rules can adapt. In the end, Greenland represents a fundamental truth of geopolitics. Power flows to those who prepare early, think long-term, and act before competition becomes crisis. The ice is melting, the map is changing, and the Arctic is becoming the next center of global power. And whether through diplomacy, investment, or strategic partnerships, the United States understands that losing influence over Greenland would mean surrendering a critical advantage in the economic, military, and geopolitical battles of the future. What once sounded like a joke now looks like a warning, because in the race for the Arctic, the nations that move first will shape the world that everyone else must live in.